Hello, welcome to the show Recovery, or this is the show Recovery Matters, and I'm your host Orlando Andrews, and of course this is the place where we talk about different aspects of recovery, from substance use disorder, mental health issues, and behavioral health issues. And so a lot of times we talk about different topics of what it takes to recover or places you can go and things of that nature, what you can do to recover. But today I thought it would be kind of interesting to do a recovery story and talk about someone who is in active recovery from substance use disorder. And today I brought a good friend of mine to come talk with us. Her name is April Barnes. And there she is right there. Hey, April.
Hi.
We talk about a lot of times when people think about recovery, we're usually looking at it from a place where people are going straight into treatment or something of that nature. So you've been in recovery for a while, right? And how long have you been in recovery, if you don't
4
mind?
years.
4 years? Okay,
Yeah.
that's
Yay.
yay. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about, let's take us on the journey of like where you came from, kind of like your upbringing, like your household, maybe what it was like when you were growing up.
Okay.
And then we're going to kind of show people how it happens, that
Okay.
you end up in this space and then how you get to recovery. So let's start there. So what was your home life like when you were a child?
For the first 5 years of my life, I lived with my mother,
Okay.
and she was active in her addiction. At around age 2, my father actually died of a drug overdose, opiates,
Okay.
and at that point, my mother's addiction really spiraled out of control, and it became very obvious to my family that she was not able to take care of me, and so they would try to help, try to intervene, and at around age 5, I was removed from her custody permanently.
Okay.
DCS involvement, in and out of different homes within my family, foster homes, and that really was the pattern of my life all the way up until I graduated high school. And so throughout my time growing up, my mother was sort of in and out of my life, but she was trapped in that cycle of incarceration due to her addiction. And so I was really exposed to how I knew the dangers of like experimenting, and I was always told that you were born an addict and you shouldn't experiment. But at around age 11, I started experimenting with drugs. It was something that was very much just normal in the foster homes I was in, a lot of older kids, so it was nothing to smoke marijuana or drink alcohol. And so I grew up knowing the dangers of addiction, but not really understanding it, and finding myself at age 11 experimenting with drugs, and on and off until, for years.
So how long were you in foster care? Like when did it start? You started at age 5, is that right?
Around age 5, yes.
Okay, and
Yeah.
so were you in foster care the whole time up until you started using at 11 years old?
Yes,
Okay.
well, I lived with some family members. I bounced back and forth, and then at age 11, I went into that's when I went into a foster home where that was my first exposure, was in that setting.
And so what did it start off with at age 11? Was it like a little drinking? Was it smoking marijuana?
Yeah,
Okay,
lots of
so-
marijuana, smoking cigarettes, and then it progressed to drinking. Then it progressed to mushrooms and psychedelics and all types of things. So
Okay.
yeah.
Now we all know, like, so you were in foster care. Was there a lot of trauma going on in the foster care system? I mean, without necessarily being too specific, but
Yeah, so I won't unpack that, but there were certainly several homes that I lived in where I was exposed to several forms of abuse,
Okay.
physical, sexual, verbal, neglect. Not every home that I lived in was, I don't believe, in it for the right reason to
Right.
actually help empower children and support children in those times of crisis. And so there were several really terrible experiences, but yeah, that's definitely trauma.
Okay.
Definitely trauma in my
Definitely some
history.
trauma.
Yeah,
So
without unpacking it. Yeah.
something that we talk about is ACE scores here, so adverse childhood experiences. And we talk about those things as being something that's going to put you on the path pretty much to substance use disorder. So with it, like, it's out of 10, as everybody knows. What was your score?
It was 9.
It was 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, there was only one that was not, that I couldn't check off, or that wasn't applicable, and that's the one about parents divorcing. But my father died at such a young age, so.
So you still didn't have a father figure there, right? So,
yeah.
Okay, so like how long, so in active addiction, just from 11 to how old were you when you were continuing, when you were out there?
So, I slowed down. I stopped using drugs even without it really going into a recovery program when I threw myself into school, into nursing school, and just into work. So I was working, I was going to nursing school, but I was still drinking. So I wasn't using any illicit drugs, but I still found myself drinking as a form of coping. And didn't see at the time that was just an unhealthy coping skill until I went to treatment, and things really just fell apart.
So what was your bottom? Like, you always hear people, especially in AA or like the 12-step programs, talking about a bottom. What was your bottom?
For me, it was the threat of losing my family and my children. That led me, essentially, I was given an ultimatum of, you go to treatment and try that and try a different way of life. Because what had happened, and really what led me to treatment, was not as much the drinking. The drinking had been happening for years. But I had began some trauma work while I was drinking, and
never a good idea, just to let you know.
Didn't realize that I was not prepared or ready to actually start doing intense trauma work, and work, family work, like work around forgiveness with my mother, and so really starting to unpack a lot of things that I didn't have any healthy coping skills in place for. My coping all of my life has been to just go, be busy, and pain avoidant, very avoidant of pain. Even growing up, I look back and I think I was a pretty happy child considering
all
the
the
dysfunction.
stuff that was happening,
and I think it was just an ability to compartmentalize and suppress, and it's like all of that really, Pandora's box just opened when I went to when I decided, I'm gonna go to therapy. And I'd never had therapy before, and I'm just gonna talk about my trauma while I'm drinking 2 bottles of wine at night. It just was not very healthy. And so what was happening, and what really led me to treatment, and what scared myself, my husband, and those that cared about me and were really on the inside of my life, was that I became really dark in this place of suicide, like thinking about suicide. I would get, when I would drink even just a few glasses of wine, I would disassociate, black out, and then try to kill myself, really. Like I was really thinking and talking about things that my husband of years had never heard me talk about. And then I wouldn't remember it, and then the next day I would say, oh, well, we don't have to talk about that. And then repeat the cycle of drinking at night and just suppress, move, go, So.
Now, you brought up your husband. So is your husband in recovery too?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yes.
And when you met, were you both in active addiction, or?
So when we met, I was an occasional social drinker. I had not, I really wanted to be a school teacher, so I thought. And so I was determined that I was really focused on school. He, however, was in the throes of his addiction, smoking marijuana, cocaine, all of the things. And I know he wouldn't mind me sharing this, but it actually was a point of, like, we came to this point of reckoning of, I did not want to be with him, and we actually split up because I thought, I can't be with an addict. I can't marry an addict, right? I can't go down that path of life. And so he stopped, and he hasn't picked up any of that in, oh my goodness, years. So yeah.
And then you said you had children too. So how old were your children at this time, or did you have 1 or 2 at the time?
So we didn't have children during that time. We had children about 5 or 6 years into our marriage, and so we lived in our dysfunction alone for a while before we decided to bring some kids into that. but there hasn't been any illicit drug use in, I mean, I can't even tell you, probably 10 years at this point. So
Okay.
it's been a long time.
So when you got ready to go to treatment, you were actively suicidal. You were having blackouts.
Yes,
It
yeah.
was kind of an ultimatum. Kind of said it's time for you to get some help.
Yeah.
And so you did that, right?
I did.
Did you do, how many programs did it take? Was it just that one program or?
So I did a really trauma-heavy program that was focused more on the trauma with an outpatient program that focused on that. Obviously, substance use and coping skills and mental health, all of that was part of it. But really identifying the need for my trauma work in a healthy setting, in a space where I wasn't drinking, where I
Right.
had some coping. And so that's what I did. I just focused heavy on that. And I did, when I left treatment, I went through an IOP program and then continued going to meetings. Did that for a while, followed, the 90 and 90,
The
all the
90 and 90,
plan.
right?
Did everything my case manager told me to do, even in treatment. I mean, I probably would have gotten an A if they grade you because I was at everything,
Right.
had my highlighters, my notes, at anything that they asked me to do. I was just fully engaged and ready to change my life. And so treatment for me was an opportunity for me to just step out of the chaos that I was creating for myself and the self-sabotaging and all the self-harm, and be in a safe place where I could get some clarity.
Okay.
And I didn't even I didn't go through withdrawal or anything like that, thankfully, in the sense that I needed like a medication protocol or anything like that.
Right.
It really just gave me the opportunity to get away from all of the things that I was trying to use to numb out pain, or the alcohol as a coping, and to keep myself safe, because I was not safe for myself whenever I went into treatment. So
I just want to bring up kind of the idea that when you're going through therapy or whenever, it doesn't really work if you're using the things to numb yourself, like alcohol or drugs. It's kind of like people try not to go to treatment, or they try not to go into an AA program. They're like, I'll just get a therapist.
Yeah.
But, if you're drinking alcohol, it's still a depressant. So you're going to continue to add to your depression. And you need to be clear or, or clear-minded so that you can work through a lot of the issues.
Yeah.
Now, did you do any of the interesting therapies like EMDR or anything like that?
So I've
to
tried
deal with your trauma?
Yeah, so I've tried EMDR. I did a lot of CBT, DBT, and then I've started some EMDR work. And, one of the things that I realized is that my ability to compartmentalize and to, when things start to feel good, I stop putting in effort in my own healing, right? And so I'll throw myself into work, or I'll throw
Right.
myself into being, a superstar mom or domestic wife, or
Right.
find avenues to really neglect my own self-care. And I've seen that pattern even since I went to treatment.
Right.
I've seen that pattern of self-neglect,
Well,
right?
that is a common pattern for people who are dealing with substance use disorder is workaholism, or
Yes.
anything that keeps you from really focusing on yourself. Like whatever you can pour yourself into to not really take time to be still. That even in recovery years later, you find a lot of people doing that.
Yeah.
Now, I want to kind of bring up something just, because I know you, so like, it's fun.
Yes.
So I know all this stuff about you. But the thing about it is, I know that you went through a major issue while you were in recovery, when you were sober, that anybody possibly would have gone right back out, but you were able to stay, sober during this time. Could you talk a little bit about what that was and how that worked?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So you're talking about the battle of cancer. Yes.
Yes. That's
So,
what I'm talking about.
it's very interesting. I never had a desire, not once, to drink the entire time.
Okay.
When I found out, when I received the diagnosis,
And how far were you into your sobriety when
a
that
few
happened?
years at this point, a couple
Okay,
years.
couple
And
years,
so when I found, because I went to treatment in December 2015, and then it was December of 2017, I believe. Or no, 16. I can't remember at this point. I just know that whenever I found out, I remember thinking, I have to live. Like, I can't do anything to compromise my life. I have to fight this. And I think that's just the survivor that, that survivor within me of I need to do what I need to do to take care of myself. And the biggest thing was my kids. I was thinking about like, I have to fight for them. And so I did a lot of organic, healthy, holistic, alternative therapies in addition to, the traditional therapy, the
Like
chemo.
what?
I went through chemotherapy, I went through radiation, multiple surgeries, more chemotherapy. And so, but never once had a desire to drink.
What were the holistic programs that you tried or you did?
So I did a lot of, well, more so just supplementing my body with like turmeric, wheatgrass, things that would support my immune system. Ginger, we bought it, or actually a friend gifted us with a juicer. And so lots of juicing, trying to abstain from unhealthy food, just trying to really put things that were going to help my body heal. And then I also am a big believer in how traumatic experiences can present in the body as physical ailments. And so there was a book called You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay that I was reading during that time and doing like a lot of prayer and self-affirmation to try to identify like what was the cause of this cancer on an emotional level and how can I heal through that. And so I really think not just healing physically during that time, I did a lot of emotional, spiritual healing during that time. And that I feel like that was what helped me stay so strong and physically gave me what I needed to keep going.
And you've been in remission now for how long?
Over a year. It's been a year and a half actually since I've had my last chemo and surgery and all of that. So
look at that.
I know, yeah.
So God is good, right?
Yes.
So now thinking about that period of your life, would that be something that also is a trauma? The fact that you found out that you were sick, that you were faced with the idea of your own mortality. Are you doing any work around that kind of trauma or that trauma that just happened to you?
It's interesting because I didn't even identify that was a trauma until recently when I went in for a checkup, like a routine follow-up, and I had a full body physical a panic attack. Haven't had one in years, and was just very triggered. I remember sitting in the waiting room in the space where I used to wait and watching clients that were currently being treated, people that were currently undergoing the chemo, go back and seeing them with their blankets shaking because they're cold, because I remember that's how it felt, right? Waiting, that fear of, oh, I'm about to get this chemo transfusion. And then I looked over and walking out was my infusion nurse that I hadn't seen in forever. And I just immediately started crying. And I think that I was able to survive through all that. And then now that it's over, I'm starting to experience that a little bit. And so I'm trying to work through that and find out how do I process that in a healthy way. Or is that just normal? Like, is it okay just to cry in the waiting room and just let that happen? And that's what I did. I was like, I'm not going to suppress this. This is being brought up, and I'm just going to process it right here. Even though I'm healthy and I'm healed and I'm alive, the trauma of that definitely has hit. Yeah.
So the idea of feeling your feelings is a huge thing about recovery. It's actually allowing yourself to be in your feelings and not run for them, because that's a lot of what the disorder is all about, is actually trying to escape how you're feeling. So, you're definitely a poster child for ACA, which is Adult Children of Alcoholics. Something that we have I've been trying to get you to go for a while, but
I bought the book.
You got the book. So
what
do you identify with some of the traits from the idea of adult children of alcoholics is growing up in a space where one of your parents was either dysfunctional or an alcoholic or an addict. And so you had a lot of not being able to get good parenting, so you have to parent yourself at a really early age. So have you looked into that program? Do you?
Yes, so I definitely identify, and I think that that's the next level of my healing and my recovery, because there are some great programs out there. I've done everything from Celebrate Recovery to Refuge Recovery to NAAA, and and they're all, I love the 12-step approach,
Uh-huh.
but specific to the way that you heal and treat your inner child, the
Right.
person, the child that was neglected. I really feel like that is going to help me advance to a next level of healing that I've
Right.
not been able to experience.
So I discovered that program 2 years into my recovery, and it completely catapulted the healing process for me. I think sometimes the AA program can be a little circular, so this was kind of like free therapy. So the other thing that we both work in the industry, now that you actually are in recovery, now that you are, you're also helping others with that. You went through a program about compassion fatigue. We just had a show on that recently.
Yeah.
And so the idea is, do you find yourself having to deal with compassion fatigue a lot? Is that, are you overgiving yourself to other people now? I know nurses have that problem in general a lot of
Yes.
times, where they give a lot of themselves away to other people to help other people. So what did you
Yes.
learn in that program, or how did you come out of it?
One of the biggest things that I took away from attending that workshop and just really trying to explore what compassion fatigue looked like for me was that I tend to want to do all things without help. I don't want to delegate. I like to, and I almost feel a pressure that I have to be that person to do that. Like, if I don't do it, then can I trust that? And not that almost a complex of of the ego, really, is what I realized. I was like, okay, is this your ego saying like I can only trust that I'll do it right? And that's not true. You don't really believe that,
I totally believe that.
Or maybe I
Still,
do,
no,
right?
I know, I totally think that
and it's
all the
not
time.
that. It's like you want to trust other people and that they're good and that their heart is pure and their mission's aligned with yours. But obviously, by me not trusting in the past, and not just in a professional setting, in all types of settings,
Right.
maybe I don't trust that that's the case. But I know my heart, and I know my passion points, and I know my desire to help people. And so I have struggled in the past with creating boundaries and with having work-life balance and being able to turn off the phone at night so I can give
Right.
my family what they need. And then what that leads to is a level of exhaustion and then defeat that I'm not good enough in any area, right? So now I'm not doing enough. I didn't help that client, or I couldn't help that client. And now I'm not a good enough mom, or I'm not a good enough wife. And that feeling of inadequacy and that negative self-talk, when I start seeing those things, I'm like, oh, okay, you need to check yourself. And one of the things, though, the biggest takeaway that I learned in Eleanor's workshop about
Right.
compassion fatigue was that even Jesus, right, the person I identify as my own savior, who would do anything for anyone, and even he took time to rest. Even he took time to step away. Even he needed self-care, right, and time away just to connect and pray. And so that was huge for me, because I thought, I'm not any better than Jesus, right? Like,
Right.
even if he needs that, then that's him modeling that any of us that are caregivers need to be able to create that boundary and know when to step away. So that actually was a huge thing for me.
Okay. So one thing that I was getting out of that, especially considering that, you were talking about not trusting, and I was saying that that's very similar to what I do. My microphone's doing weird things.
Yeah.
Similar to what I do, actually, in that I want to control everything or do my own, if I can take care of it, then it's going to work out. If I have to trust someone else to do it. And what I found that is a lack of understanding of the third step. Like, my biggest issue is with the third step, which is the let go and let God thing, because
Yeah.
the lack of trust means that you don't really trust that Spirit has your back, or
Yes.
Jesus has your back, or higher power, or whoever you're connected to.
Yeah.
So do you feel that you might struggle with that as well? A little bit, or
Right.
you know?
And that's what it is, right? When you're not able to just trust and let go, and that's really saying to God, like, I don't believe that you have the best interest, my best interest.
Right.
And in so many areas, I have such a strong faith, right? So with
Right.
cancer, I was like, I just knew, like, God's healed this. Like, he's going to heal me. He's already spoken that into my life. And I didn't necessarily fret or worry about that. And so it's interesting how the big things in life, I'm like, he's got that. But then the small things that I want to micromanage, that I can't just trust that, that I can let go.
Like, my higher power is too busy to deal with this.
Yeah, I have to take care of this, right?
I got this part.
But
I'm the same way. The idea that anything huge or anything big or anything that I'm worried about, still quiet, God's got this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But any of the little things, I'm just, I'm helping you out. I gotta worry about this.
I'm just gonna take that off your shoulders, right?
Exactly. You don't have time for this.
And so that's why I say, really, I look at it and I'm like, that's an ego thing. It has to be, right? Like, that's a God complex. It's an ego thing, and that's not easy to say out loud. But it is the truth of it. Like, that's what the foundation is. So yeah.
So now that you are in recovery, now that you're in this space, what is it that you want other people to understand about how, you've been through a lot. I mean, it's been tragedy. You got some tragedy when you were in sobriety. What is it that you want people to know about how easy or how to come to recovery or how to get into this process? What do they need to do, really?
So really, the biggest thing, and this is what I tell anyone that I'm working with, whether it's someone in the community, recovery community, or a client, recovery is a process, right? So even if someone goes to treatment, the expectation that in 28 days, 30 days, however long they stay, that everything is going to be fixed, and then you leave and you're changed forever. And that is not the reality. The reality of it is that while you're in treatment, if that's the route that you go, you are in a therapeutic bubble. You're in this space where you don't have to think about, like if you're a mom, all of the stresses that come with managing children or being a wife or trying to work. And so there are so many roles in life. I realized when I stepped out of treatment, out of that therapeutic bubble, I was like, wow, how do I now work on my recovery and also be a mom, be a wife, go back to work? And it's so much that I ended up just taking time off of work. And so I'd really, really want to say to people just to give themselves grace to fail and it not be catastrophic that, treatment or that their program isn't working or that God isn't going to heal them. It's that they are in a process of change that's going to take continuous effort.
Nice. So. I think that's a very wonderful thing to close on, actually. That recovery is a continual process. That is not immediate. That is something that you continue to work towards. So anyway, this has been April Barnes, a really great friend of mine, a really wonderful person, sharing her story of strength, hope, and recovery. And until next time, this has been Recovery Matters. Thank you.
We are currently undergoing a mental health crisis. Millions of people are struggling with depression, anxiety, PTSD, suicidal ideations, or a substance use disorder. If you or someone you know needs help with a behavioral health, mental health, or addiction issue, please reach out. There is support for what you're going through. Call 800-676-0929 to speak with a recovery navigator who will help you find support. Again, call 800-676-0929. Call now. Recovery is possible, and recovery matters.